Hello, everybody. My name is Mark S. King, and I am an HIV long-term survivor and a writer. And the reason that I'm here with these gentlemen today is because we're going to be discussing a story that was in the current issue of POZ Magazine. If you haven't read the story, please go online to POZ.com and look for Meth Still Kills, or you may find POZ Magazine if you're a subscriber, or probably in your local pharmacy. I'd first like to introduce Chuck Parker. Hello, Chuck.
Hello, how are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Chuck lost his roommate to meth addiction. It's what opens the story in pretty dramatic fashion, and I was so impressed that Chuck was able to speak with me only days after losing his roommate, and we'll be talking about that. Second is David Fawcett, PhD. David is a addiction and sex therapist and specialist, has written the book Lust, Men, and Meth, and is often my cohort in times like this where we talk about the various intersections between meth and gay men. Hello, David.
Hey, Mark. I was going to say it's good to be here. I am happy to be here and talk about this, but I'm sorry that we're still talking about this after 30 years.
That's right.
It needs to be talked about.
I know you've been on the forefront of this for a long time, and we're going to talk about that. The fact that we've been talking about it for a long time, and a lot of people thought that it had kind of faded away for a while.
It still kills, as somebody said.
It certainly does, more than ever, apparently.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, we have Breaun Randle. Breaun is also in Fort Lauderdale and is in recovery from meth addiction. Hello, Breaun.
Hey, Breaun.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. Honored to be a part of this story.
I really appreciate that. And, it sounds, so patronizing when I say, and you're so young. But the fact is you're in your mid-20s. And at that age, to have the presence of mind and the character to want to talk about your addiction and recovery process is really impressive. And thank you very much for talking to me initially and for appearing on this.
Absolutely.
And then finally, we have Doug Rose out of Baltimore. Hello, Doug.
Hello.
Doug, speaking of being vulnerable, Doug spoke in the article about being a long-term survivor with HIV and the particular pull that meth use can have, particularly among those of us who are aging, who don't feel as, sexually active or as, pretty as we once were, I suppose, is the way to look at it. And you talk about in the article having had a relapse because you were on meth, because you knew it was the surest way to get laid.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. And it was also the surest way to break up 15 years of sobriety. But yeah, that's what happened. That's the story. And I'm glad I was only out there 10 days. I learned that the sex hasn't gotten any better in all these years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to be back in recovery now.
I'm happy for you. So as you can see, for you viewers here, we really have a large representation here among gay men, and of course the article does focus specifically on gay men, and the fact that we have a friend of an addict, someone young who came into meth use very early, and then a long-term survivor who turned towards it as a means of feeling sexually viable again. I'm going to start kind of in the order of the article. Chuck, let me start with you. When I interviewed you for this story, and the article opens with a scene of you dealing with the body of your roommate, Mark, who had died the night before of extended meth use. He had only passed away maybe 2 days before you had this conversation with me. I'm still shocked that you had the presence of mind to speak to me then. Why was it so important? What gave you the strength and the wherewithal to want to talk to a journalist only 2 days after having discovered your roommate's body?
I felt that it was part of the healing process. I felt like I could open up and talk to you like you were a friend. You knew where I was coming from. You understood where I was. You know, I was able to start, healing from the process through the conversations.
Your roommate had been your roommate for 12 years, so you weren't just roommates, you were really good friends. And I know that you had
Right.
seen Mark through various bouts of drug use over the years, but I don't know if it had ever seemed as intense or as bad as it was the previous few days before he died, before he overdosed.
Yeah, you definitely knew that things were different. It was a different level. I mean, I'd called the ambulance the night before.
Mhm.
You know, you really see a difference. You know, it was like I was living in a twilight zone.
You were also, I remember when I spoke to you and did the interview, you were mad. You were mad. Your leading emotion at that time, 2 days after his death, was anger. You were angry at him. You were angry at people on social media who were giving you a hard time for stating that your roommate died of a meth overdose. They thought you shouldn't be talking about it or saying it. So you had a lot of anger about it then. Do you still feel that way?
I've made a lot of peace with it. I feel like, you know, he was a tortured soul with his drug use, and maybe this was his best way out. You know, I feel like I'm at peace now, and
You
I'm at
know,
peace now. I've made peace with it.
of the five of us, you are the one that isn't, doesn't have a history of meth addiction. You're kind of, the worried friend represent, and I know that you had a lot of questions. You were just confused by why somebody would choose the drug over their health and their livelihood and their friends. Are you still left with a lot of questions like that?
Like something traumatic made him continue to use, and that was his healing. That was his only out. Um, because I deal with this at work. Um, I have to link people to addiction programs at work all the time, so I see it. It's just weird to have to deal with it in your own home, where it's supposed to be a safe place, a quiet space.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, gosh, I don't know if I ever told you how very, very sorry I am for your loss and for the trauma of having gone through what you did, to kind of pick up the pieces after that. David, you've been sounding the alarm about this, as we noted, for a long time. And I guess I get focused as someone, as a recovering meth addict, I get focused on those of us who are recovering and our journey and all of that. And it's easy to forget friends and family members who have to be there to clean up the mess time and again. People like Chuck.
Right. And oftentimes people like Chuck and Chuck, I also want to say how sorry I am for your loss and for the torture that it was leading up to that moment, and your friendship and support. I mean, up to calling the ambulance the night before. These are the kind of stories I hear all the time with this kind of disease, and with meth particularly, more than any other drug or any other behavior, meth produces such large amounts of dopamine that it becomes the brightest object in the room, and it takes precedence over family, friends, jobs, anything. And we see this playing out time and time again. And so, and that becomes what we see in people's lives, and the judges people make, the choices, and the wreckage that follows. So, and this pattern is unchanged for 30 years. And it's actually getting worse now with fentanyl. And I don't know if fentanyl is involved in your friend's case, but that's adding an even more disastrous twist to the current epidemic. So,
And David, when you say, for the last 30 years, I think a lot of folks who were paying attention to meth and gay men, I remember a gay pride parade maybe 10 years ago that had an anti-meth float in it. And I went, oh, great. Okay, people are probably, they're listening. And we've gotten to the point where we're saying, okay, this is not cool anymore. this particular, okay, you got your dance floor drugs and all of that, and boys will be boys, and that's all fine and good, you know, but then you have this, then you have meth, and it looked as if we had turned a corner and people were starting to, the social scene was, it's not cool. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
Mark, I think we've talked about the 90s when protease inhibitors came out and circuit party started and Viagra came out and meth hit the scene, right? All this sort of perfect
Yes.
storm of all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the circuit party era of meth. And I think that did kind of run its course. And we have now, I think, meth 2.0, right? And I think that's meth that's related to the apps. And it's kind of gone underground. It's a different way of distribution. It's kind of part of, it's infiltrated into the social scene in a whole different way. So I think that old sort of circuit party thing is, it's still out there, of course, but it's less less visible perhaps than the things on Scruff and Grinder and all that world that I think has kept it going and actually reinvigorated chemsex, if you will. Because it's not just meth, it's other drugs as well. So I think it just kind of morphed into this new thing that has only gained in popularity.
And when you say gained and been a part of the apps and all of that, the next person that I included in the POZ Magazine story, Breaun Randle, Breaun, you talk about the fact that meth kind of came with your coming out process, that it was there from the beginning, and you almost equated meth use with gay sex, or at least with being gay. Am I describing that accurately?
Yeah, Mark, that's pretty much it. You know, like David was saying, meth has a strong hold on the I guess the internet world of hooking up. And when I was ready to step into my own as a gay man, meth was there to greet me along with the person that I was looking to hook up with. And for many years, I mean, that's all that I knew. And everyone that we interacted with or came in contact with was just another person and a part of this world that, you know, I felt accepted in. I felt accepted in that world. And as a part of the coming out process, you know, acceptance is a big thing. So it was just ready and available. And that's all that I knew for a period of time.
You know, I remember, you know, using meth in my 40s, you know, and beyond, and feeling like I had found a tribe, you know,
Yeah.
or that it was the great equalizer, in that you would be in a room with other gay men who were maybe prettier than you were, or younger than you were, or whatever, but the drug was the constant, and the drug was the welcome wagon. And I know what you mean, I guess, about feeling accepted. It's what a shame it is that a young man coming out as gay, that's you know, that was part of the being accepted,
Right.
was the meth.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and a part of that, and part of being so young in that, you know, the people that I was interacting with were much older than me, you know, so I felt that, you know, this is something that would be a part of my life for a long time. And that those were things that were encouraged, you know, like, oh, I've been people expressing their emotion of, you know, you're gonna be doing this for a while. There's no getting out of this. And I'm just glad that I found a way out. So.
Well, first of all, I'm really glad you found a way out too. When you talk about older gay men that you were with, I never looked at it that way, in terms of you saw that and you just figured that they had been using meth their whole journey, you know, all along, or at least, and they were telling you to expect the same. There's something really dark about that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And then finally, Doug, you know, when we talk about the acceptance part of it, I know that you were so vulnerable in our interview, in that you were talking about the aging process and not feeling as, you know, as sexually viable as you once did, but you knew there was a way that you might have a shortcut toward sex again.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when I started when I started messing around with meth, it was the mid 90s. And, we were still hooking up on phone sex lines. And it wasn't unusual for someone on a phone sex line to say, hey, do you party? Do you want to come over? And a lot of times that meant coke, but even increasingly it meant crystal meth. And that's where my addiction got started. Um, and I had, in the middle of all that, I was diagnosed with HIV. And that was a period when I probably should not have lived as long as I did. A lot of people I know did not live very long. And I thought, well, I'm dying. What the hell? I'm going to go out having fun. Except I didn't die. And there came a point where the fun wouldn't stop, you know? And but something had already fused in my mind that, sex and meth worked together. They were just something that worked together. And for a long time, until I don't know, 2003, 2004, something. I was using meth because I thought, I'm old, nobody wants to have sex with me, and everybody wants to have sex on meth, including me. And so for me, it wasn't so much a welcome wagon as it was a lure. I could get boys to come over to the house if they knew I had something to party with. And yeah, that came to a tragic end. I became a daily user and eventually ran into trouble with the law, and I was brought to my knees, essentially, and escorted into the 12-step rooms, which have really kept me going for a lot of years now.
I should mention that we don't explicitly mention any particular program of recovery in the article, but the article does include several links to ways to find help, which include Crystal Meth Anonymous and include websites where you can find rehab houses, halfway houses, inpatient recovery programs, any of all of which, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so any attempt to look for help is probably heading in the right direction. Doug, you and I are both long-term survivors, so we know something about having lived for our friends who did not. And a lot of the meth addiction part, at least the part where I had to forgive myself for a lot of things, was forgiving myself for being so cavalier with the life that I was given beyond all of those friends who died.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the drugs were my coping mechanism, but they were also the distorting mechanism. And I can remember one time in New York, I was in the middle of an orgy at my place, and I made everyone stop because I realized it was the anniversary of the death of my best friend. And so I had a little memorial service with all these guys high on meth. But that's how I dealt with it. And they all sort of got it. And then we went back to what we were doing, but it was, to get all that stuff mixed up together is just not a good thing.
David, isn't it weird how we all of our values, you said meth comes first before anything, but isn't it strange how, here you have Breaun as a young man trying to connect, and Doug and I as long-term survivors trying to honor the lives that we have, but in active meth addiction, it all gets tangled up. It gets tangled up, and you're trying to be a good person in this crazy environment,
Right. I think the one thing meth really robs us of, in addition to a lot of physical health and emotional health, well-being, is integrity. Right. We become different people. We start doing sexual things, moral things we never thought we would ever do, and there's not even judgment about that. It's just people are out of line with who they want to be and who they think they should be and want to be themselves. And that's part of the pain of this thing. I'm a long-term survivor myself, and I've been very frustrated seeing generation after generation of guys, who survived the dark days that the three of us are talking about too. I was diagnosed in '88, and a lot of guys died, and to see people come out of that and then succumb to methamphetamine is just so maddening to me. But I understand it's a way to cope with the grief and the connection, and the thing that we have to address in the gay community, which is this thing we have when we hit 40 or 50 or 60 and start to become invisible to each other, and you know, sex and intimacy become elusive and kind of mysterious, and we just don't know who we are and what we are, because there's no way to kind of be at that age. And I think we really have to look at that as a community, because that's really underneath this whole thing, is how are we connecting with each other, how are we supporting each other, how are we loving each other and being kind to each other as a community. I think that's really the issue here.
And you know, I want to acknowledge, of course, again, Chuck and his roommate Mark, who was a long-term survivor and was active in the HIV scene, and lost his life to meth, in this great irony of having, you know, made it out of one, you know, horrible community health crisis alive, and then get tripped up by another one. You know, I want to be able to say to you, Breaun, you know, that I hope that you've learned that gay men of a certain age, our age, maybe aren't as twisted as the ones that you knew in the first few years of your coming out. In other words, I think that we talk a little bit in the article about the fact that you've met a different kind of gay man, and you've met different kinds of older gay men, or even, you know, your peers, who are not driven by that drug and who have different values and relate to each other differently. You relate to other gay men differently now, don't you?
Yes, that's true, David. Mark, I definitely found my tribe, and I found that there are plenty of tribes out there, you know, even if just a little less crazy and a little less dark, the kind of dark and crazy that, you know, doesn't ruin your life after a few weeks. So I've been blessed, and it's truly a miracle. You know, it's a miracle that many of us make it out, and that many of us, you know, are able to connect, because meth has robbed us of a lot, and a big part of our life, and who we are is associated with that. But when you find a tribe of people who, you know, you connect with and have shared the same trauma, it really brings a spark back into your life. So I'm definitely blessed.
And I know that those tribes are varied, and they include variations in age. It's not just the young ones who can find connection again. You know, the old survivors, like some of us here, we know something about finding our tribe again. I'm wondering, finally, just about the reactions to the article itself. Some people might be watching this who have read the article and are curious about you guys and who you are and what your lives are like. Chuck, what have you gotten many reactions to your having been in the article and having that admittedly terrible, what must be one of the most awful nights of your life in black and white in print in the magazine? How has that been for you? Are you okay? And what's the reaction been?
I've been okay. I've seen 3 people reach out to me about programs for addiction to get clean. One person told me that they were going to take a job that required them to do drug tests, and they were not doing any more meth because they felt that they're going to be the next one. I feel like we're doing a good positive impact in the community by coming out like this, and they're saying, you know, they're going to try to make a difference instead of be the statistic. We reach the right people.
Yeah. And no regrets. You're okay in terms of your own feelings about how the article came out?
Oh, I thought it was beautiful. It was perfect.
Okay, great. Breaun, what kind of reactions are you getting?
You know, a part of my tribe are other young gay men who are, you know, HIV positive and undetectable, and I've only received good and praise for having shared my story. I thought the article was amazing, some amazing stories, and also, you know, real and true. And I think it's a message that has to be shared, and has to continue to be talked about for as long as it takes.
Thanks. You know, when you mentioned other young HIV positive men, I failed to mention the fact that at some point in your meth use, or shortly thereafter when you entered a rehabilitation center, you tested HIV positive. And it was, I guess, just another example of something that certainly David knows all too well, and that is the HIV risk of crystal meth because of the lowering of inhibitions, and all of these new diagnoses as a result. And you said you're doing well physically?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I think, you know, the care that I've received has been amazing. It's not something that I would have reached for had I been still using. So I'm feeling great and never been better.
I'm so happy for you to hear that. You know, Doug, you had to come clean, as it were, you know, in an article in a magazine about having relapsed on a drug that you were very, you know, proud of your long recovery time. How has the reaction to the article been for you?
Well, I have heard from one or two friends who wrote to me to tell me how they thought I was brave and how they thought I you know, I was doing a service by speaking out. I don't know if that's true or not, honestly, but I hope it speaks to somebody. I'm not hearing from strangers. People are not reaching out to me from the world to tell me, oh, it's the kind of story. Well, when you and I first talked about it, I said, this is not the kind of appearance in the media I want to share with my parents.
Mhm.
You know, I'm proud, I'm glad to have done it, but it really isn't showing me at my best.
Hmm.
You know, it's really showing me kind of at my worst, at my most sort of inept, you know, and I think it's important for men of a certain age to see that and to know it doesn't have to stay that way. But I'm just not sure. I'm thinking, like, the first time I read about meth in POZ Magazine was in the early 2000s. I will never forget the cover. There was this handsome muscle guy, like, soaring up to the heavens, and the headline was something like, meth makes you feel like you'll live forever. And even at that point, they were talking about, you know, the dangers of meth. And I had that magazine with me for a long time, even when I was hosting parties in New York. It was sitting over there in the corner, you know, and it stuck with me all these years. So I hope our article sticks with someone over the years, and when they need it, they will learn from it, and they will do what they need to find the help they need.
Well, yes, and I will take issue with one point, and that is whatever you consider your ineptitude, I considered transparency and honesty and incredible vulnerability, and you're telling the truth, and there's great honor in the truth.
Yeah,
And as you suggest, by our telling the truth, by all of us sitting here on this call, by us telling what actually happened, is definitely going to help somebody. Because among us, you know, the youngsters, the long-term survivors, the person concerned for a friend, we just have to tell the truth. And you know, David, that leaves us here again, trying to get a message out about the fact that meth is chemically different than it used to be, and is killing more people, 3 times as many people as it once did. What's the final message here? What can we do beyond this article to let people know that? What can anybody watching this do to make a difference, especially if they're worried about a friend?
And I think really to do exactly what this article did, and we've been talking about meth for so long, as we just discussed, what this article does is really put a human face on the different dimensions of it. And I'm so privileged to be with you 3 guys, especially in the courage. And I agree with what Mark said, Doug. It's not, in any way, ineptitude. It's that vulnerability that all you guys have displayed at such a public level. This is an important message because this is the stigma and shame, just like HIV, that people hold. These are secrets people hold, and it's keeping us sick. And so I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can share what's on our hearts and it's really hurting us and help each other. That's the key. And people are tired of hearing about it, but they're tired of hearing about the stereotypes and the statistics. But if we can put a human face on it, like we're doing here, that's the difference. And everybody knows somebody. We just have to, and by the way, Chuck, I just really appreciate what you've done, because I live in a very gay little place here in Wilton Manors. There's a lot of people are dying of methamphetamine. Very few people say what the cause of death was, right? It's a little secret. And so we don't really see the problem. And I know how painful it was, but I appreciate your sharing that. And you probably got grief from it, I'm sure. But we need to talk about this. And so just kudos to you, Mark, for doing this. We need to keep talking about it. People are sick of hearing about it, but we need to keep it up. We need to keep that drumbeat going. And because the problem is getting worse. The problem's not going away.
I want to thank the four of you for being voices on an incredibly important topic. I want to thank POZ Magazine, my editor, Oriol Gutierrez, for his belief in this topic. He said yes as soon as the topic was brought up. And to put it in the Pride issue in June, I think was really brave of him and provocative and right. So I want to thank everybody for watching this. If you'd like more information, please go to POZ.com, look for Meth Still Kills. It will include a lot of resources for you. Thank you very much.